I kissed my best friend's dad at his wedding. I was not supposed to come here. Smile and play the perfect +1. Just a quick weekend, no big deal. Except my best friend's dad is getting married, and I'm the best man. Oh, and I've been in love with the groom since I was 17. The drive was fine. Adam was humming along to the radio, oblivious, with his sunglasses sliding down his nose as he drove. You good, he asked? Remind me why I'm here instead of home again? You're practically family, and Dad insisted he wanted someone who truly knows him for this, Adam said, breaking the rhythm of the radio. Besides, you're less likely to lose the rings than me, he chuckled. My stomach knocked tighter. It was a renewal of vows. I muttered even though I wasn't sure if I was reassuring him or myself. Exactly, Adam said, grinning. The worst thing that can happen is we run out of beer, or Diane annoying us non-stop. The second will be happening for sure. I have to laugh. My guts were already tying themselves into knots as the estate came up into view. It was stupidly picturesque. The kind of place that screamed romance. We stopped near the entrance, a big group of friends and family, already gathering, laughing around. I stepped out, smoothing my blazer again, but it wasn't the crowd making my heart feel like it would stop beating any second. It was him, Lucas, Adam's dad. He was standing by the front steps, looking exactly how I remembered. And somehow, even better as years passed, he looked perfect in his navy blue suit, and relaxed with confidence in his posture, and all above, his smile. God, that smile. My heart gave an embarrassing lurch. Let's go, Adam said after finishing parking. At that moment, his dad turned to us, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before landing on me. His smile shifted, brightening, making it impossible to look away. Adam, my dear. He hugged his son. Then he turned to me, arms stretched, pulling me into a warm, smelly hug. Glad you made it, Nathan, he said casually, clapping a hand on my shoulder with the same ease I'd never been able to resist. Electrifying. His smile was warm. Sure, but there was a flicker of something else. A glint in his eye that felt dangerous. I forced myself to laugh back, but my legs were shaking. The crush had been killing me since it started. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help hating it. At the same time, I adored to desire him. How could I miss it? I managed to answer. His grip lingered longer than it needed to, his thumbs brushing lightly against my blazer. So, look at you all grown up, he said, stepping back to appraise me with his slow, deliberate glance from head to toe. His voice teasing. Not the shy kid hiding behind my legs anymore. My cheeks betrayed me, trying to turn red. Well, yeah, times change, I muttered. He mumbled, tilting his head slightly. Maybe. There was something in his tone, like he knew exactly where my thoughts had gone. Adam snorted by my side, blissfully oblivious as always. Not much. He still hates small talk with strangers. Lucas laughed, and the sound sent an unwelcome thrill through me. Let's get inside. Bar's already open. Or, he paused, gazing at me. Do you prefer soda? I chuckled with strangeness. I'm an adult filled with work. So yes, lots of alcohol, please. He laughed again. Good boy. Adam and I followed his lead. This was fine. Totally. I could survive a day of pretending I wasn't still a 17-year-old idiot who melted every time he looked at me. As we entered the bar, Lucas glanced back, his eyes onto me, his lips curving into a faint, knowing smile that sent a shiver down my spine, like he'd always known. Fine, I told myself, shoving the first shot of tequila inside. Everything's fine. Some hours later, the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation filled the diner, but all I could focus on was the sharp edge of Diana's voice every time she talked to Lucas. Do you think this wine was the best choice, Lucas? It's so safe, she said, rolling her eyes. But then again, you've always liked playing it safe. Lucas gave a tight smile and smoothly changed the subject. Meanwhile, I gripped my wine glass, trying to stay calm. How was he keeping his cool? Adam nudged me, sensing my frustration. Easy, he whispered. It's just one dinner. How do you handle it? I whispered back. Years of practice. Diana wasn't done. This whole event has your name on it, right? What will people think about all this boring food? Lucas's jaw tightened, but he laughed it off. What about the centerpiece? They're underwhelming. It's just basic. My grip on my glass tightened. If he had any ambition left, maybe this party would glow a little better. She added, her voice cutting. Aren't you plateaued, honey? The words stung, but Lucas kept his composure. Then, before I could stop myself, I blurted, well, he had the ambition enough to build this business from scratch before marrying you. Maybe you should cut him some slack, or arrange your own party. The table fell silent. Diana's eyes narrowed, and Lucas froze in shock. Adam laughed. Oh no! I roasted my best friend's dad's wife. Someone take my bad wine away. Burned, he said, smirking. Let's get drunk. Diana's smile was sharp. How charming, two young boys being boys. Lucas broke the tension with a smooth laugh. Nathan's always been my bodyguard, while Adam's the life of the party. Let's do as my son says. Time to get drunk. Once he stood, his hand lingered on my shoulder, brushing my neck a little bit too long. I told myself it shouldn't matter, but my heart raced. Later, Adam disappeared with a girl, leaving me alone. I ordered a shot of tequila, then stepped outside for some air. Leaning on the stone fountain, I heard footsteps behind me. Thought I might find you here, Lucas said, holding whiskey. I straightened, tucking my hand into my pockets. Needed air, and I've already caused enough trouble. He chuckled, coming to stand beside me. You didn't have to defend me, but thanks. She was out of line. I can be a brat sometimes, I muttered. He laughed again, low and deep. You've always had a fierce loyalty. It's a good quality. And maybe a little dangerous. Dangerous? I joked, trying to hide my nervousness. The max she can do is scratch me with those fake nails. He chuckled softly, his gaze steady, though something flickered in his eye. Not everyone's willing to stand up for someone like that. I shrugged. You're not just someone. The words hang heavily in the air. He looked up at me, and then was something unspoken between us. He sighed, glancing at the fountain. Nights like these, they're exhausting. Sometimes I feel like I'm just part of a decoration. For her, maybe. I blurted before thinking. He stepped closer, his body brushing against mine with a familiar tenderness. You're one of a kind, kiddo. I sighed at the nickname, and we stood there, quietly enjoying the nightlife, even though I knew nothing would happen. The next morning, I woke up in the sun streaming through the curtains, the pit in my stomach from last night's venue still there. As I passed through the garden on my way to breakfast, I saw Diane and Lucas arguing. I told you, Lucas, this isn't just about today. You never take anything seriously. Diana's voice cut through the air. This isn't about us anymore, Lucas said, his voice controlled, fists clenched. Her laughter was brittle. Us, Lucas? There hasn't been an us in years. She laughed bitterly. You think standing there like a martyr makes you the bigger person? You asked for this renewal. I agreed for you, for appearances, but I can't keep pretending everything is fine as you keep trashing every step I make. Pretending, her voice spiked. You've coasted through life, letting everyone else pick up the pieces. If you think that about me, why didn't you leave sooner? He retorted. Oh right, because you've always said you'll make me regret it. Why don't you test it out? I rushed my steps, but Lucas caught my gaze before I could look away. In the breakfast hall, Adam greeted me with eggs and bacon. Any mimosas, he asked. $5, it's stashed in Diane's room, I mocked. If it were, they wouldn't be fighting, Adam said, rolling his eyes. Who hasn't heard it? Honestly, how does he stand it? I've lost track of how many times we've talked about it. Adam said, now, I just go with it. But your dad, he seems lost, I said, unsure how to phrase it. My dad? I don't think so, Adam shrugged, clueless. I let it go. I shrugged and decided to not say anything else. For me, hearing them sounded like Lucas had realized that he'd built a love life he didn't want. We chatted a bit more while eating, and before I could change before the ceremony, I decided to see Lucas. Maybe there's something I could help with. The bridal suite felt like sacred ground. I had no right to invade. Then, with a deep breath, I knocked. Once I heard I could come in, I saw Lucas sitting on the bed, his jacket discarded, and his tie hanging loose. He seemed surprised to see me there, and I regretted going there for a second. "Nathan," he asked, his voice low, a little bit husky, like he shouted and held his voice for too long. "Shouldn't you be with Adam?" I sat beside him, close enough to feel his tension. "You don't deserve that," I said, hands balling into fists. "You're more than what she says." He let out a dry laugh. "I've been in your life the same number of years as her, so I can proudly say I know you well enough." I continued, his gaze locked onto mine, with a vulnerability I've never seen. "Why do you always say things like that?" "Because I care," I answered, my heart racing. He laughed bitterly. "I remember when you still called me uncle." My heart stopped. His hands brushed mine, and I wasn't sure if it was for my comfort or his own. "I'm too old for that now," I whispered, feeling the tension between us. "I noticed," he murmured. His gaze flickered to my lips, and before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in, and he didn't stop me. Instead, his other hand found my face, gentle but insistent, guiding me closer, and our lips met, tentative at first, as we were both afraid of the consequences. The kiss was soft and hesitant, like it'd disappear if we weren't careful enough. I tried to pull away, but that seemed to shift things. His grip tightened slightly, pulling me deeper into the kiss, forcing my mouth to open wide for his tongue to cover me. And I responded like it was the most natural thing in the world to do. When we finally broke apart, both of us gasping for air, I couldn't look at him. My hands trembled, but I wasn't sure if it was from fear or excitement. "I'm sorry," I muttered. He was staring at my soul, and I felt like all my secrets and walls crumbled in his blue eyes. Time indeed has passed. He was mature, even handsome, and my crush. It was not even nearly disappointing. "I've been watching you for so long," he said, his voice rough. "I don't think you'll realize how much." A shiver ran through me. "What do you mean?" "The New Year's party," his voice wavered to me. "You've always been this untouchable thing, so brilliant, so far out of reach, and I convinced myself that's where you belonged, somewhere I couldn't ruin." His gaze softened, turning almost wistful. "But then you looked at me that night, and I realized you weren't untouchable. You were real. You were standing right in front of me, and I was the one who couldn't touch it." My heart raced, remembering how I ached that night. "Lucas," I blurted out. I told myself it was just admiration, but you made it impossible to ignore. "Lucas, that was 5 years ago," I whispered. He brushed his thumb over my lip. "Yes, but I convinced myself I was just your friend, your protector. Last night, you were mine. Thank you for that." I swallowed hard. "I never knew you felt that way. I probably ruined everything," he said, laughing bitterly as he stood. "Forget this." "How can I?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "This was a dream come true." He stared at my wide eyes. "What?" "I've had a crush on you since I was 17, I said, moving towards the door. I turned to face him. "I won't say anything, but don't ask me to forget this." He stared back for what felt like a lifetime. "This was a mistake. One I'll carry with me," I said firmly. "It's too messy," he replied. "I like your mess." Then I left. A few hours later, by the time of the ceremony, I was coming back to my place by the altar when I passed over some of Lucas's business associates and heard Lucas's name, his business, words like struggling and bad decisions. I tried to brush it off. Gossip was inevitable at an event like this, especially with Diana involved. I grabbed Adam's hand. "I overheard Diana bad-mouthing your dad," I told him. "What?" he asked, confused. "She's planting seeds with his clients. It's bad," he sighed, rubbing his face. "She's always manipulative. But this is next level. Why now?" "Because she wants to see him fail," I said. Adam clenched his jaw. "I'll talk to Dad." When he found Lucas talking to a client, but his weary eyes told me he knew the whispers were there. Before I could say anything, Lucas cut us off with a firm, "Not now." As the ceremony began, Lucas called Diana over. "Could you spare me a moment?" His voice was calm but edged with warning. Diana approached, masking her surprise. Yes, darling." "Some people go to great lengths to protect their egos," Lucas began, loud enough for everyone to hear, like undermining others to protect their desires. The murmur spread. Diana's smile wavered. What does this all have to do with the ceremony? Everything, Lucas said, gesturing towards his associates. I know you've been speaking with my clients, spreading lies. Lies? Diana's voice cracked, her panic showing. Lucas, how could you accuse me of— Spare me, he interrupted. I trusted you to be a partner. Diana grabbed his coat, hissing. You're humiliating me. Adam stepped in. You've been humiliating him all his life. Diana whispered, You'll regret this, Lucas. He laughed bitterly. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. Then he turned to the guests. Thank you for being here. I want a divorce. As for you, he addressed the associates, I'll meet with you later this week. About time, one of them muttered as the table chuckled. Adam whistled, and I was too stunned to speak. Diana rushed off, and we stayed enjoying the chaos of what turned into an impromptu divorce party. I had never seen Adam and Lucas so relaxed, and when in the middle of a drinking game, his eyes met mine, I knew this wasn't an ending. This is the start of something I wouldn't even dare to name. 3 weeks later, I couldn't open any of Lucas's messages, so I decided to ignore it. I wouldn't say anything, just keep that to myself, as our little secret, hoping it would make my crush fade away for good, especially for Adam, whom I was right in front of, sharing drinks, even though the sight of his father's name on my lock screen was eating me alive. I'd want to text him back and hear his voice that badly, but I won't open Pandora's box. When Adam called me, I almost denied it, but that would have been weird, so I went along. I can't hide from him forever. The light of the bar was low, as usual. He laughed at something I couldn't quite follow when the conversation took another turn. He started talking about his dad, and all that he's been going through. Finally, he got a divorce, he said. I'm relieved. He deserved better than Diana. But things are getting bad. Such a bitch. I nodded, swirling my drink. I didn't know if that was the cue I needed, or just alcohol braveness, but I decided to ask. Would you be okay with your dad dating someone unexpected? Adam raised an eyebrow, then laughed. As long as it's not my ex, or another Diana. He could swing for guys like you do. Wouldn't that be funny? I tried to not show any surprise, so I just shrugged and laughed. I felt the weight lift off my chest. Maybe, just maybe, in some alternate reality, this could work. But was I ready to face everything I could lose? 5 months later, my life kept going as usual. Work, study, workout. That Friday shouldn't have been any different, except I was walking back from an internship when I spotted him. Lucas, he was standing outside a small bookstore, looking so different. He was healthier, happier even, and younger. I almost didn't recognize him at first. His clothes were darker than Diana never would allow him to wear, and his posture was so relaxed. I thought I was delusional. He saw me before I could duck out of his sight. His expression shifted, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Nathan," he said, his voice warm, as if time hasn't erased our proximity. I stopped, unaware of what to do. It's been so long. I never answered one message. I never looked back. "Hey," I managed to say through my unspoken emotions. He took a step towards me, scanning me like he always did. "Do you have time for a coffee?" I nodded, incapable of saying yes or no. The cafe is quiet, a place he and I usually appreciated. But there's something about being here, with him. A sensation of a new beginning, and a sensation of never being apart at all. The convo starts light, but it doesn't take too long for the tension to surface. Lucas talked about his new life, and how he's finally moving on, including expanding the business. But I can see in his eyes that something changed even deeper. "I don't know if you'd like to hear this, but I never stopped thinking about you," he admitted in a low tone. "And seeing you now, it's like everything I felt that day rushed back. So, for me, it's confirmation that it wasn't a mistake as I thought." My heart sank. I wanted to say something, to fight it back, to deny those words, like it didn't even look like it gotten out of my own mouth. He said all I was thinking, and didn't even know. Without a second thought, I leaned in. His eyes widened in shock, but he didn't stop me when my lips locked onto his. This kiss was different, quick, but hesitant. I wasn't scared. No second guessing. It was my raw, undeniable, and pulsing love for him unsaid. But when I backed out, he was smiling. A beautiful smile. "I've missed you," Lucas said, his voice rough. "Sorry for not answering your texts or calls. I know it must have been too much. I don't know what I was waiting for." I smiled, feeling cheesy about what I was going to reply with. I caressed his hand and tilted my head down. "You were waiting for me. It's true, though, like the weight of those months of silence finally lifting." He laughed loudly. "I think I've always been waiting for you. I realized I wanted that sound in my life forever. That crush wouldn't fade, no matter how I tried." A few days later, I'm sitting on the bench in the park, nervous, waiting for Adam. Lucas and I decided to give it a try, and I said I should tell him first. So, when Adam arrived, grinning like always, I could tell he knew something was off about me. "You're not the kind to call me first." "Everything okay?" he asked, sitting by my side. I took a deep breath, thinking it would feel like taking the bandage off. "I'll cut to the chase," I sighed again. "Remember when you said your dad maybe should try swinging other ways?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Adam furrowed his brows, then laughed loudly. "No way!" he laughed. "Who is it?" "Oh my, I never thought that actually happened." He mumbled for some seconds, until he stopped and stared at me, connecting the dots. "No way," he repeated. "You and him?" His eyes tore. "I'm sorry, Adam. I never meant for it to happen. I had a crush on him since my teen years." "No shock," he mocked. "What? Dude, you literally told him you thought he was hot the first time you got drunk." "Oh my god," I blushed. "I thought that was a dream." He laughed again. "Well, I wouldn't say this isn't a bit weird, but I know you, and I know my dad, and he's happier, so it must be your fault." Adam stared at me for a long moment, processing the seriousness behind the truth. I could feel my pulse in my throat, waiting for his blessing or cursing. But then he exhales, his face softening. He looked at me with eyes I've never seen my friend with, which somehow made me happy. "You've always been good to him. I think you'll work out just fine." I hugged him with desperation and relief. I was grateful for his acceptance, despite the weirdness. Our lasting friendship, his love for me, and all in between. Something big has shifted, something important, and now I can finally breathe. I never thought I'd be standing here, telling him this, but in the end, that's all I needed to find my peace. 1 month later, we were at Luke's place, trying to find some normalcy in the chaos when it happened. Diana texted him, and once he showed me, his words hit me like a slap. "Oh, I'm sure you haven't heard, but people are definitely talking." It's a warning wrapped in a smile. And I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was digging into our past, things we both tried to bury, using them to tear Lucas down. Diana had always known how to get what she wanted without being noticed. And now, she was after whatever I had with Lucas. Weeks had passed since she released the picture of us at the cafe, kissing. And the photo went viral, and rumors kept spreading. It wasn't long before the new rumors emerged. Lucas was accused of cheating, of playing the victim, while leading me on. I knew people were talking, and despite the fear, we were trying to keep it cool. I was sitting beside him, and he grabbed my hand. "She's a pain in the ass." "I know," I replied, "but it's only going to get worse." "I'll take care of it," Lucas promised, though I secretly thought he couldn't. The damage was already done. At work, my co-workers watched me with pity or judgment, and my boss couldn't look me in the eye. Everywhere I went, it felt like everyone was wanting to see how I'd react. But then, not so randomly, I saw Diana outside the cafe I used to take my work break, watching me like a predator. "You think this is funny?" I snapped, fury boiling over. She smiled. "I thought it was time everyone knew the truth. Nathan, after all, Lucas can't keep hiding from his past forever." "Shut up, Diana," I growled, stepping closer. "This has nothing to do with you." "Oh, but it does," she said, her eyes glinting. "Lucas has always gotten what he wants, even when it means hurting people along the way. Do you really think he'd protect you when everything comes crashing down?" Her words cut deep. Diana was playing a game, and Lucas was the one who was going to lose. Hearing her made me angry. The next day I called Lucas. I won't let her destroy you. I promise. My voice steady, despite my heart racing. But you have to let me fight for us. Don't make any moves without me. I don't know how much more of this I can take, he sighed. I'll deal with this soon. Good. As the storm raged, I realized that fighting for Lucas wasn't just about protecting him. It was about fighting for our love and the future we could still have. The next week, the day Lucas met with Diana arrived. He had been reluctant to my presence at first, but we promised to deal with it together. Why Diane? Lucas asked as soon as we stepped onto the sterile conference room. His voice was steady, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the storm underneath. Ending things wasn't enough for you. You just had to go after my business too. Diana leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with the kind of poise that screamed calculated control. Her crimson lips curved into a sharp smile, the kind meant to cut deep. Lucas, she drawled as if amused. What exactly are you accusing me of? I'm just an innocent bystander to your little struggles. The anonymous complaints, the contracts pulled out at last second. Don't insult me by pretending you had no hand in it, Lucas said, sharp and decided. I had the decency of not calling any lawyers so far. For our history, could you please stop? She looked at me. Why did you bring your puppy with you? Lucas sighed. I need a witness. She laughed it off. If your business is failing, she said, shrugging delicately, maybe you should take a good look in the mirror instead of blaming me. Your inadequacies are hardly my problem. You're right, Lucas replied, leaning forward, his tone sharpening. You're not my problem anymore. But sabotaging what I built is, and you're going to let me get away with it. And honestly, you really will have half of the money for the rest of your life. I don't know the point of this. Her mask faltered just for a moment, the icy confidence cracking around the edges. She glanced at the folder Lucas placed on the table. A thick collection of evidence I'd helped him compile over the weeks of digging. You think you've won something here, she snapped, her composure slipping. Do you think this will scare me? It's not about scaring you, Lucas said evenly, meeting her gaze head on. It's about me stopping you, and I will. Her smile returned, this time colder, more venomous. Her eyes shifted back to me, narrowing with a cruel precision. Let's see about that. Well, I tried to play nice. He pointed to the folder. This is evidence in all sorts of ways. Audio, messages, emails, my lawyers and yours. That crazy sister you have are also in the other room, discussing what will happen to you. So if you have any brains left in that revengeful idea of yours, now is a good time to let it go. For a brief second, she seemed caught off guard. But it was fleeting. Her mask snapped, breaking into place. With a cold, dismissive smile, Diana stood. Well, she said, smoothing the front of her blazer, if you're done playing hero, I have better things to do. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, and she walked out, leaving the air thick with tension. Lucas exhaled slowly, his hand brushing against mine. It's over, he said, though his voice carried the weight of exhaustion and relief. I nodded. Next Friday, I stood outside the cafe where it all started. Months ago, I wasn't sure how things could unfold. But now, with Lucas, everything just makes sense. I stepped inside to find him at our usual spot. His eyes met mine, and the familiar warmth spread through me. He said, Hey, he said a little hesitant. Something about today feels different, but not in a bad way. Without wasting time, Lucas pulls out one of the small envelopes and slides it across the table. I want to make this official, he says, his gaze steady. I've been waiting. If you're in, I want us to really try. I want you with me. I open the envelope slowly. A key to his apartment and a note. For a new beginning. I look at him. No words are needed. Everything I've been feeling is clear in how he looked at me. Hopeful, vulnerable, and honest. I set the key down carefully, reached across the table, and kissed him. Soft, gentle, but with all the certainty I could muster. It's not a kiss, it's a promise. We don't need to say anything else. This is it. Conclusion. As the weeks passed, it's almost like we no longer need to try. Our lives began to overlap more and more, until they were indistinguishable from each other. We spent Sundays wandering the streets, exploring the exhibits and parks, our hands brushing against each other, like a subtle reminder of how easy it all feels. Cooking breakfast together became a ritual, as does me always stealing his favorite mug, and his being baffled by the mysterious of the milk carton. Adam, in his way, has come to embrace the change. He teased about the future in-laws, with the lightheartedness that makes Lucas laugh more than he'd care to admit. But with each passing day, the nervousness and doubt that once shadowed my thoughts disappear. Even with all the divorce hearings and fights about money, we were grounded. Our relationship is something I don't just accept, but something I've come to cherish. We made it ours, and first step feels like the right one. The end. What's the scariest moment you've faced considering a big change in the relationship? Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.